The quieter you become, the more you can hear. Ram Dass. Some people will only love you as long as they can use you. Their loyalty ends where the benefits stop. Unknown. There are battles you don't hear. No noise, no shouting, no fire, just silence and strategy. This isn't the kind of fight you see in movies. It's the kind that happens in the mind, between two very different people. One is the narcissist, full of pride, charm, and tricks. The other is the dark empath, calm, quiet, and deadly in their own way. A dark empath doesn't fight loud. They study. They wait. They understand you so well. They can break you without even touching you. When a narcissist meets a dark empath, something strange happens. The game flips. The hunter becomes the hunted. And slowly, without even knowing it, the narcissist starts to fall. This is a silent war, a psychological game. And in this video, I'll show you how the dark empath wins, step by step. No hate, no drama, just calm destruction. If you're someone who loves to understand people, the real, hidden side of them, then this channel is for you. Drop a comment, show some love, and join the community. Because this is just the beginning of stories that go deep. And hey, stay till the end. Because the way this war ends will stay with you long after the video is over. Let's begin. In the beginning, everything feels normal. The dark empath doesn't walk in with drama, noise, or any signs of danger. They are calm, kind, and seem to be understanding. They listen more than they speak. They give soft smiles and quiet attention. People around them feel safe. Even the narcissist, who always thinks they are the smartest in the room, feels like they are in control. But the dark empath is not like everyone else. They notice everything. Not just what's being said, but how it's being said. They see the small lies, the fake charm, and the little signs of control. They don't react. They don't fight. They simply watch. And this is where their power starts to grow. In their silence, they are learning. In their quietness, they are planning. The narcissist believes they are pulling the strings, but the dark empath is slowly collecting every piece of the puzzle. They begin to understand the narcissist's habits, weak spots, and fears, all without saying a word. This is the calm before the storm. Everything looks peaceful on the outside, but underneath, the dark empath is preparing. Like the sea just before a huge wave crashes down. Nothing loud, nothing fast. Just steady, silent steps. Right in the middle of it all comes the hook, the turning point no one expects. The narcissist, full of pride and overconfidence, doesn't see what's coming. They think the dark empath is just another person they can use. But the truth is, they've already lost. The moment the dark empath walked in and chose silence over noise, patience over anger, the game began. This first stage is quiet, but powerful. It is the most important part of the silent war. Because real strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just walks in, smiles, and waits. The dark empath never rushes. They don't try to prove anything. Instead, they begin by watching. Quietly. Carefully. Like a person reading a book they've read many times before. Every page, every chapter, every word matters. And in this case, the book is the narcissist. At first, the narcissist feels confident. They believe they've met someone who admires them. Someone they can charm, control, and use. The dark empath allows this to happen. Not because they are weak, but because they are smart. They know that showing resistance too early would only make the narcissist hide their true self. So, the dark empath listens, nods, and observes. They make the narcissist feel safe, like they've won. But underneath that quiet smile, the dark empath is already working. They're studying patterns, how the narcissist talks, how they lie, how they try to control the conversation, and how they treat others when no one is looking. They watch the way the narcissist changes moods quickly, the way they need attention, and the way they react when they don't get it. Here's where the real twist happens. While the narcissist shows off and tries to impress, the dark empath begins to understand them more deeply than the narcissist understands themselves. It's like watching a magician perform a trick and knowing exactly how it's done. The narcissist believes they are putting on a show, but the dark empath already knows how it ends. This stage is silent, but strong. The dark empath doesn't expose the narcissist yet. They don't speak up. They simply keep reading, calmly flipping the pages, learning everything they need. By the time they reach the end of the book, they know exactly where the cracks are. And when the time is right, those cracks will shatter. But for now, they stay quiet and keep reading. The dark empath knows something powerful. People often hate seeing themselves clearly, especially narcissists. So once the dark empath has silently observed and understood the narcissist's patterns, they begin to reflect those same behaviors back. Not in a cruel or loud way, but with quiet precision, like holding up a mirror. The narcissist is used to being in control. They lie, manipulate, twist stories, and play with emotions to feel powerful. But suddenly, the dark empath starts doing the same things, carefully, subtly. The narcissist starts to feel confused. Something feels off. For the first time, they're not the one leading the game. They hear their own tone, their own tricks, coming from someone else. And they don't like it. This is the emotional mirror. When the narcissist gaslights, the dark empath responds with calm denial. When the narcissist ignores, the dark empath goes silent too. When the narcissist tries to control, the dark empath becomes just as cold and distant. The mirror is not meant to destroy the narcissist directly. It's meant to make them see themselves. The version of them they don't want to admit exists. Most people run from the narcissist's behavior. But the dark empath? They reflect it. They show the narcissist what it feels like to be on the receiving end of their games. This is when the narcissist begins to panic. They lose their balance. The person they thought was weak is now matching their energy, calmly, quietly, and without fear. The narcissist starts to question, why isn't this working anymore? And that's when control starts to slip through their fingers. Being mirrored is the one thing a narcissist cannot handle. They survive by hiding from their truth. But the dark empath gives them no escape. No screaming, no fighting, just reflection. And in that reflection, the narcissist sees something they never expected. Themselves. Flawed. Exposed. Powerless. That's the beginning of their breakdown. All from a mirror they never saw coming. The dark empath carries a rare and dangerous gift, controlled empathy. This means they can feel deeply, understand emotions, and connect with others. But they don't let those feelings control them. Instead, they use empathy like a tool, sharp, focused, and calm. While most people care too much or too little, the dark empath finds a strange balance in between. And that balance becomes their quiet weapon. When dealing with a narcissist, this controlled empathy becomes especially powerful. The dark empath can sense the narcissist's pain, their needs, and even the wounds they try to hide. But instead of fixing those wounds with kindness, they gently press on them. Just enough to keep the narcissist uncomfortable. Just enough to stay in control. At first, it feels like care. The narcissist thinks they found someone who truly understands them. Someone who listens, stays calm, and offers support. But slowly, the dark empath gives them exactly what they ask for. Not what they need, but what they crave. And that's the trap. If the narcissist wants praise, the dark empath gives it. But only when it benefits them. If the narcissist seeks attention, the dark empath offers it, then suddenly pulls it away. If the narcissist shares a secret, the dark empath listens and remembers every word. Here comes the hook. The narcissist never suspects a thing. They believe they're in control. But all along, they're being guided, step by step, by someone who understands them better than they understand themselves. This is how the dark empath helps and harms, without a single trace. They don't scream. They don't punish. They simply turn the narcissist's own needs against them. It's not revenge through rage, it's strategy through empathy. And in the end, the narcissist doesn't even realize what happened. They just feel drained, confused, and broken. All from the quiet touch of someone who knew exactly how to get inside and gently pull everything apart. The dark empath is not someone who shows their power right away. They don't walk in trying to prove a point. They don't act aggressive or loud. In fact, they appear soft, calm, and kind. The type of person the narcissist believes they can control. And that's exactly why the narcissist never sees the threat coming. Because the dark empath wears a mask of peace, a mask of patience, a mask that hides the sharpest mind in the room. The narcissist is used to winning. They are masters at reading weakness. They quickly spot people who are insecure, people who want love, attention, or approval. They use charm, flattery, and lies to pull others into their game. And when they see the dark empath, quiet, thoughtful, emotionally aware, they think they've found the perfect target, someone who will give, forgive, and never fight back. But this time, they're wrong. Because the dark empath is not weak. They're watching. They're studying every word, every move. They understand how emotions work, not just their own, but others too. And while the narcissist is busy showing off and playing their usual tricks, the dark empath is already 10 steps ahead. The narcissist doesn't recognize the danger because it's hidden. The dark empath's strength is not in shouting or controlling. It's in their silence, in the way they slowly build trust, in the way they ask questions that seem harmless, but reveal everything, in the way they allow the narcissist to feel powerful, while quietly gathering every detail that can later be used to shift the balance of power. Here comes the turning point. The hook. The narcissist begins to feel something strange. Their charm isn't working as well anymore. Their usual tricks are falling flat. They sense a shift but can't explain it. And by the time they realize something's wrong, it's too late. The dark empath has already seen their weak spots, understood their fears, and quietly started pulling away everything the narcissist depends on: attention, control, admiration. What makes the dark empath so dangerous is that they don't need to fight to win. They don't expose themselves. They stay masked. They stay silent. But every move they make is precise. Every word is planned. And every emotion is calculated. The narcissist, who thought they were the predator, ends up being the prey. That's why the narcissist never sees it coming. Because the hunter doesn't always roar. Sometimes the hunter smiles, listens, and waits. And when they strike, there's no noise, only silence. But in that silence, everything changes. The dark empath understands one simple truth about narcissists. Their ego is everything. It's the center of who they are. It drives their actions, their lies, and their charm. They need constant praise, attention, and admiration to feel powerful. Without it, they feel empty. And the dark empath knows exactly how to use that need, to destroy them from the inside out. In the beginning, the dark empath appears supportive. They offer compliments, agree with the narcissist's stories, and show just enough admiration to keep the narcissist feeling strong. This isn't done out of love or respect. It's done with purpose. The dark empath is feeding the ego, making it grow, giving the narcissist exactly what they want. And the narcissist falls for it. They feel powerful, admired, and in control. They believe they've found the perfect admirer, someone who truly sees their greatness. The dark empath plays the role perfectly. They smile, listen, praise. But deep down, they are watching everything. They are learning exactly what makes the narcissist feel important, what they need to hear, and how often they need it. Then slowly, things start to change. The praise comes less often. The smiles fade just a little. The attention begins to disappear. The narcissist, who once felt adored, starts to feel ignored. They ask themselves, did I do something wrong? They start chasing the dark empath for the same attention they once took for granted. But the more they chase, the less they get. This creates confusion, frustration, and eventually panic. The dark empath doesn't argue or explain. They just pull back quietly. And each time they do, it drains the narcissist's ego, a little more each day. The narcissist becomes weaker, more unstable, and more desperate. They don't understand why the power they once had is slipping away. But it is, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. This is the silent destruction. The Dark Empath gave them the high, only to take it away. They built the ego up, just to control it. And when the narcissist is left empty, questioning themselves and begging for attention, the Dark Empath walks away, calm, quiet, victorious. The most powerful weapon in a Dark Empath's arsenal is not their words, their actions, or even their emotions. It's something much more subtle. It's the weapon of silence. The Dark Empath doesn't need to shout to be heard. They don't need to argue to win. They don't need to raise their voice or make a scene. They understand something crucial. Silence speaks louder than anything else. It's in the stillness that the true power of the Dark Empath is revealed. When dealing with a narcissist, silence can be devastating. Narcissists crave attention, approval, and validation. They constantly need others to feed their ego, to tell them they're amazing, and to bow down to their superiority. When the Dark Empath enters their life, they start by giving the narcissist exactly what they want. But the moment the narcissist feels comfortable, the Dark Empath begins to withdraw. Slowly, quietly, and without explanation. At first, the narcissist doesn't notice. They continue their usual manipulations, expecting the Dark Empath to react, to give them more attention, or to beg for their validation. But as the empath remains silent, the narcissist starts to feel the pressure. The usual compliments, the constant need for admiration aren't coming. The silence grows louder. The narcissist begins to panic. The weapon of silence isn't about ignoring someone. It's about leaving them to deal with their own feelings. The narcissist, who's used to being the center of attention, suddenly finds themselves in a place where they are no longer the focus. They are left with their own thoughts, doubts, and insecurities. And that's where the Dark Empath's power lies. By refusing to engage in the narcissist's games, the Dark Empath forces them to confront themselves. The more the narcissist reaches out for attention, the more the empath remains calm and distant. The narcissist begins to feel the emptiness. They wonder, what's wrong? Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they feeding my ego? This emptiness, this void of attention, starts to eat away at the narcissist. They feel ignored, invalidated, and most importantly, exposed. The Dark Empath doesn't need to fight. They don't need to argue or explain. They don't even need to raise their voice. By simply withdrawing, by remaining silent, they create an environment where the narcissist must face their own fears and insecurities. The longer the silence lasts, the deeper the narcissist's anxiety becomes. Eventually, they crack. Silence becomes the darkest weapon because it forces the narcissist to realize that they are no longer in control. They are not the ones pulling the strings. The Dark Empath, with their quiet strength, has already won. And the narcissist, lost in their own desperation for attention, will never see the true danger until it's too late. The Dark Empath is a master of the bait and switch. They know exactly what the narcissist craves: admiration, control, attention. And they use that knowledge to play a dangerous game. At first, it seems like they're giving the narcissist exactly what they want. They feed the narcissist's ego, offer praise, and give them the validation they desperately seek. But this is all part of the plan. The Dark Empath isn't interested in boosting the narcissist's self-esteem for any positive reason. They are quietly setting the stage for a psychological trap. In the beginning, the narcissist feels on top of the world. They are receiving the attention they love, the compliments they thrive on, and the admiration they need to feel validated. They think they've found someone who understands them, someone who will always be there to praise them and fulfill their needs. And so, they become comfortable. They drop their guard. They believe the Dark Empath is a tool they can easily manipulate. But the Dark Empath doesn't work that way. They give the narcissist just enough to make them feel powerful and adored. But then, they pull back. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the narcissist starts to notice the attention fading. The empath doesn't shower them with the same compliments anymore. They don't laugh at their jokes as much. They don't agree with everything the narcissist says. The validation starts to disappear, and the narcissist begins to feel that familiar panic rising in their chest. This is where the bait and switch comes into full effect. The narcissist, already hooked on the praise and attention they were receiving, tries harder to get it back. They ramp up their attempts to manipulate the dark empath, perhaps by flaunting their success, bragging about their achievements, or even demanding more admiration. But the empath remains distant, cool, and detached. They don't react in the way the narcissist expects, and every time they try to pull the narcissist back in with more praise, the empath gives a little less. The more the narcissist seeks, the less they get. What makes this so devastating for the narcissist is that they don't understand why they're being treated this way. For them, everything was fine, until it suddenly wasn't. They thought they could rely on the dark empath for endless praise and attention, but now, they are left feeling confused and frustrated. They start to question themselves. What did I do wrong? Why are they pulling away? The narcissist's world starts to fall apart. They become anxious, desperate for the validation they were once given freely. And the dark empath watches, patiently, knowing that the narcissist is now completely dependent on the very attention they took for granted. This silent manipulation, the giving and then withdrawing of what the narcissist wants most, chips away at their confidence, leaving them uncertain and vulnerable. The bait and switch isn't about cruelty. It's about power. The power to control the flow of attention, to make the narcissist feel small, even though they don't know they're being played. In the end, the dark empath walks away, leaving the narcissist scrambling to regain their lost sense of control, never realizing they were the ones who were used. Emotional chess is a game the dark empath plays with precision. It's not about confrontation or chaos, but about careful strategy, where every move is calculated and every reaction is controlled. Unlike others who might let their emotions dictate their actions, the dark empath remains calm and collected, their focus never wavering. They understand that emotions are powerful tools, and they wield them like a master strategist, knowing exactly when to make their move to manipulate the emotional landscape. When facing a narcissist, the dark empath doesn't rush into battle. Instead, they observe. They watch for weaknesses, patterns, and emotional triggers. The narcissist, who believes they are always the one in control, never sees the dark empath coming. They are too busy inflating their ego and maintaining the illusion of perfection. But every narcissist has a crack in their armor, and the dark empath knows exactly where to find it. Each move the dark empath makes is deliberate. They know that the narcissist craves admiration, power, and control, and they use this knowledge to create the perfect emotional scenario. They might give the narcissist just enough praise to keep them hooked, but only to keep them vulnerable. They offer just enough attention to make the narcissist feel important, but they withhold it enough to leave them longing for more. It's all part of the plan, a slow, calculated game where the narcissist is unaware of the stakes. As the dark empath moves through the game, they carefully push and pull the narcissist's emotions. One moment, they show empathy and understanding, drawing the narcissist in with the promise of affection or admiration. The next moment, they pull back, creating a sense of confusion and longing. It's like a carefully timed checkmate. The narcissist becomes emotionally unstable, uncertain of what's real and what's not. They begin to question themselves. They wonder why the dark empath isn't reacting the way they expect, or why their usual tactics aren't working. The genius of the dark empath's strategy is that they never show their cards. They never make an overt attack. Instead, they expose the narcissist's vulnerabilities and weaknesses without saying a word. With each emotional move, they force the narcissist to confront themselves, to deal with their own insecurities and fears, all while remaining in control. The narcissist, who thrives on manipulation and control, becomes the pawn in this game of emotional chess. They can't see the dark empath's plan because it's too quiet, too subtle. The narcissist's need for validation, their constant hunger for admiration, is slowly chipped away at, piece by piece. Every time they try to regain control, the dark empath anticipates their move, and counters it with a calm, deliberate response that weakens them further. By the end of the game, the narcissist is emotionally drained, confused, and exposed. The Dark Empath, with their precise moves and calculated silence, has dismantled the narcissist's ego piece by piece. The narcissist never saw it coming, because, in the end, they were never the ones truly in control. They were simply pawns in a game they couldn't even recognize. The narcissist's sense of control is the foundation of their entire identity. It's what keeps them feeling powerful, superior, and in charge. Everything they do, every relationship they form, every interaction they have, is designed to reinforce their sense of control. They manipulate, charm, and dominate because, deep down, they fear being exposed as weak or vulnerable. But what happens when that control begins to slip? When the mask they've carefully crafted starts to crack? This is where the Dark Empath comes in, quietly shifting the balance. The Dark Empath doesn't need to confront the narcissist head-on or start a fight. Instead, they simply withdraw or stop playing by the narcissist's rules. They stop feeding the narcissist's ego. They stop giving the constant validation that the narcissist craves, and that's when the first signs of a meltdown begin. At first, the narcissist might not notice. They'll be too focused on their own needs, too absorbed in their own reflection to recognize the subtle shifts around them. But as time goes on, they start to feel the shift. The empath no longer reacts the way they expect. They no longer jump at the narcissist's manipulative comments, or validate the false narrative the narcissist loves to create. And that's when confusion creeps in. The narcissist begins to feel off balance. They try harder. They escalate their tactics, attempting to regain control by becoming more charming, more demanding, more manipulative. But the Dark Empath stays calm. Their response is controlled, their attention fleeting. The narcissist's usual tricks no longer work. Their confidence starts to crack. This is when the narcissist's true self begins to show. The illusion of power begins to fade, and they become increasingly desperate. They start to lose their cool. The charming, confident front starts to slip, and frustration takes its place. They lash out, they demand more, they try to guilt the empath into reacting, but nothing works. The narcissist's carefully constructed reality begins to collapse under the weight of their own insecurity. The meltdown is inevitable. The narcissist begins to show signs of panic, irritation, and anger. They start questioning why things aren't going their way, why their usual tactics are no longer working. The more they push, the more the empath retreats, and the further they fall into emotional chaos. Their sense of superiority slips away, replaced by feelings of doubt, confusion, and fear. In their meltdown, the narcissist might try to blame others, to deflect, or to rage at the world for betraying them. But the truth is much simpler. They can no longer maintain control. The Dark Empath, without lifting a finger, has dismantled their sense of power by offering the simplest thing the narcissist can't handle: nothing. The narcissist's meltdown isn't just a loss of control, it's the unraveling of their very identity. When they can no longer control their environment, when their ego is no longer fed, they're left with nothing but their own inner chaos. The Dark Empath may not have caused this breakdown directly, but they've made it impossible for the narcissist to keep up the illusion any longer. In the end, the narcissist's meltdown is inevitable. They can only maintain the facade for so long before it cracks, leaving them exposed, vulnerable, and desperate. The narcissist thrives on one thing: power. They need to feel superior, in control, and admired. Without this constant reinforcement, they feel vulnerable, anxious, and unsure of themselves. And when a Dark Empath steps into their life, the first thing they learn to do is shift the power, subtly, quietly, but with devastating precision. The Dark Empath doesn't need to be loud or forceful to take control. They don't need to shout or confront the narcissist directly. Instead, they shift the dynamics with small, calculated actions, playing on the narcissist's insecurities and amplifying their self-doubt. The empath doesn't just take the narcissist's power away. They make the narcissist feel like they're losing it. It begins with the empath's emotional restraint. Narcissists are used to being the center of attention, the one who demands validation, admiration, and control. But the dark empath refuses to indulge them. Instead of feeding the narcissist's ego with constant praise and validation, the empath offers just enough to keep them hooked, but not enough to satisfy their insatiable hunger for admiration. This withdrawal of attention creates a subtle feeling of insecurity in the narcissist. They start to wonder, why isn't the empath reacting the way I want? The empath also starts to subtly mirror the narcissist's behavior. They don't argue or directly challenge the narcissist's sense of superiority. Instead, they reflect the narcissist's own actions back at them. If the narcissist is arrogant, the dark empath remains calm and detached. If the narcissist manipulates, the empath mirrors it in a way that makes the narcissist uncomfortable. The narcissist begins to feel disoriented. They can't quite understand why their usual tactics aren't working on the empath. They start doubting themselves, questioning their own ability to control the situation. Next, the dark empath introduces small, quiet contradictions into the narcissist's world. They may subtly challenge the narcissist's beliefs, or subtly disagree with something they said, but in a calm and logical way. The narcissist, who thrives on being right and having the last word, becomes rattled. Every contradiction plants a seed of doubt in their mind. Am I wrong? Did I miscalculate this? The narcissist starts to feel uncertain about their own actions, and this doubt, though small, begins to grow. As the narcissist feels the empath's growing emotional distance, their control over the situation starts to slip. They begin to feel insecure, unable to fully understand why the empath isn't reacting in the way they expect. Their mind starts to spiral. They wonder, is it me? Why is this person distancing themselves from me? With every small act of emotional detachment, the dark empath makes the narcissist question their own worth, their own power, and their own sense of control. The empath doesn't need to directly challenge the narcissist. They simply withdraw the validation the narcissist has come to rely on, and that withdrawal sends the narcissist into a tailspin of self-doubt. In this way, the dark empath shifts the power. Instead of the narcissist controlling the situation and the empath quietly takes control by making the narcissist doubt themselves. The narcissist starts to lose their grip on the world around them. They can no longer manipulate the empath as easily. The emotional distance leaves them feeling exposed and vulnerable. They begin to question their own worth, their self-image, and their ability to control others. And with that doubt creeping in, the dark empath quietly becomes the one who holds the power, without ever having to raise a finger or make a loud statement. By making the narcissist doubt themselves, the dark empath takes control of the situation in the most powerful way possible, silently. The narcissist, so used to having power over others, now finds themselves questioning everything. And that's when the dark empath has already won. The dark empath doesn't need to be overt to take control or exact revenge. Their strength lies in the art of subtlety, the ability to hurt, manipulate, and shift the balance of power without ever raising a hand or using a single harsh word. They understand that revenge isn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. It's about quiet, controlled actions that leave a lasting impact. And when it comes to a narcissist, this type of revenge is especially effective. A narcissist thrives on attention. They live for admiration, praise, and control. Their ego is fragile, and they can't stand when things don't go their way. The dark empath knows this and uses it to their advantage. They don't confront the narcissist outright. Instead, they work behind the scenes to slowly undermine their sense of control, pushing them to a point where their world begins to unravel, all without ever directly engaging in a fight. The first move in this subtle game of revenge is emotional withdrawal. When a narcissist realizes they no longer have the emotional grip they once had on someone, it throws them into a state of confusion. The dark empath begins to pull back their affection, praise, and attention, not all at once, but in a way that is barely noticeable at first. The narcissist begins to feel a sense of unease. They wonder why the empath isn't reacting to them in the way they expect. The validation they used to get becomes more difficult to attain, and this creates an internal dissonance that the narcissist cannot ignore. But this is just the beginning. The dark empath understands the importance of mirroring the narcissist's own behavior. When the narcissist manipulates, the dark empath reflects their manipulative tactics, but in a way that makes the narcissist uncomfortable. They don't call the narcissist out on their behavior. They just mirror it in small, subtle ways that expose the narcissist's own flaws and insecurities. This gives the narcissist a taste of their own medicine, leaving them uncertain and uneasy. Next, the dark empath will stop feeding into the narcissist's narratives. Narcissists thrive on being the center of attention, the person everyone revolves around. They need others to believe in their inflated version of reality. The dark empath stops playing into that. They stop agreeing with everything the narcissist says. They stop laughing at their jokes, and they stop showing the admiration the narcissist craves. By doing this, the empath takes away the narcissist's power, and the narcissist feels it. They begin to question their own influence, their own worth, and their own ability to control the people around them. Perhaps the most painful form of subtle revenge the dark empath employs is emotional isolation. They don't directly attack the narcissist or call them out. Instead, they subtly encourage others to question the narcissist's behavior. They plant seeds of doubt in others' minds, creating situations where the narcissist feels alienated and misunderstood. Over time, the narcissist begins to feel isolated, abandoned, and disconnected from those they once controlled. The lack of support and admiration takes its toll on their fragile ego, and they start to unravel. The dark empath doesn't need to physically harm or shout insults. They harm by taking away what the narcissist needs most: admiration, control, and validation. They create a sense of confusion and insecurity in the narcissist's mind, all while remaining calm, composed, and emotionally distant. In doing so, the dark empath not only gets revenge, but they also expose the narcissist for who they really are: fragile, dependent on others, and easily shaken by a lack of validation. In the end, the dark empath's revenge doesn't need to be loud or violent. It's quiet, calculated, and leaves the narcissist reeling. Their world crumbles under the weight of their own insecurities, and the dark empath, who orchestrated the downfall, walks away, leaving the narcissist to deal with the mess they've created. The true power of the dark empath lies in the ability to hurt without ever having to raise a hand. It's the art of subtle revenge, and it's devastatingly effective. When a narcissist realizes they are losing control, especially at the hands of a dark empath, they often try to fight back. They can feel their grip on the situation slipping, and in an effort to regain their sense of power, they'll attempt to reassert themselves, often using the same manipulative tactics they've always relied on. They might become more aggressive, more charming, or more demanding, trying to force the dark empath back into a place of submission, where they can once again feed their fragile ego. But here's where the real brilliance of the dark empath comes into play. The narcissist's attempts to fight back almost always fail. Narcissists, at their core, thrive on attention, admiration, and control. They view themselves as superior to everyone around them and believe that anyone who doesn't submit to their authority is in some way wrong. So when the dark empath starts to withdraw their emotional energy, stop providing constant validation, and begins to mirror the narcissist's own manipulative behavior, the narcissist starts to panic. They will try to regain control by becoming more intense in their approach, often using tactics that are meant to provoke an emotional response. They might lash out, play the victim, or attempt to guilt-trip the empath into reacting. But this is exactly what the dark empath is waiting for. The dark empath is emotionally resilient and able to remain calm in the face of chaos. They've seen the narcissist's behavior before, and they know exactly how to counter it. The first thing the narcissist often does when they feel they're losing control is to escalate the situation. They'll increase the pressure by demanding more attention or trying to manipulate the empath's feelings. They might accuse the empath of being cold, distant, or uncaring, hoping to provoke a defensive response. But the dark empath remains silent and detached, refusing to engage in the emotional games the narcissist is playing. The narcissist doesn't know how to handle this level of emotional distance. They've spent their entire lives manipulating others into reacting to their whims and desires, so when they're faced with someone who doesn't fall for their tricks, they become confused and frustrated. This confusion turns into anger, and the narcissist will often escalate their behavior further, trying to insult, belittle, or humiliate the empath into reacting. But each insult, each attempt to provoke a response, only serves to further isolate the narcissist. At this point, the narcissist has lost control of the situation. They've tried everything: manipulation, gaslighting, guilt-tripping. But the dark empath simply isn't responding in the way they expect. The empath is not taking the bait. They're not getting drawn into arguments or emotional outbursts. This forces the narcissist to confront something they can't stand: their own vulnerability. The narcissist's ego is built on a fragile foundation of superiority and dominance, and when that foundation starts to crack, they're left exposed. When the empath doesn't react, when the narcissist's tactics fail to provoke a response, the narcissist starts to doubt themselves. They question why the empath isn't being manipulated in the way they expect. The narcissist begins to feel uncertain, even afraid. They might try even harder to regain control, but the more they push, the more they expose their weaknesses. It's in these moments that the dark empath truly thrives. They don't need to fight back with words or physical confrontation. Instead, they simply withhold emotional energy. They create emotional distance, forcing the narcissist to deal with their own feelings of insecurity and inadequacy. The narcissist, used to being the center of attention, now finds themselves completely ignored. Their tactics have failed, and they're left with the overwhelming realization that they've lost control. Not because of anything the dark empath did, but because they simply weren't able to manipulate them. This inability to control the dark empath causes a breakdown in the narcissist's fragile sense of self. They don't know how to exist without being the center of attention, and when their usual tactics no longer work, they face the uncomfortable truth: they are not as powerful as they thought. The dark empath's quiet strength has exposed the narcissist's weakness in the most devastating way possible. The narcissist's attempts to fight back only hasten their downfall. The narcissist's failure to regain control doesn't just affect their relationship with the empath. It shakes their entire sense of self. For someone whose entire identity is tied to manipulation and dominance, the realization that someone is impervious to their tactics can be devastating. The narcissist's self-doubt grows, their insecurities are magnified, and they begin to unravel emotionally. The more they push, the more they expose their true, vulnerable selves, and the dark empath, ever calm and composed, watches this unfold. In the end, when the narcissist tries to fight back and fails, it's a clear sign that their manipulation and control tactics are no longer working. The dark empath, by refusing to engage, has exposed the narcissist's fragility and shown them that their power is an illusion. The narcissist may never fully understand why they couldn't control the empath, but the empath's silence, their emotional resilience, speaks volumes. And in the quiet aftermath, the narcissist is left to pick up the pieces of their shattered ego. The dark empath understands the value of a silent exit. When they've grown tired of the narcissist's games, manipulation, and control, they don't need to announce it or create a dramatic scene. In fact, the most powerful thing they can do is to simply walk away, leaving the narcissist in their own chaos, without any closure or explanation. It's a tactic that speaks volumes, and it's one of the most devastating forms of revenge the dark empath can wield. For the narcissist, control is everything. They need to be the center of attention, constantly admired and validated. When someone like the dark empath enters their life, the narcissist feels a false sense of control, believing they have power over the empath. But when the empath decides they're done, they know how to slip away silently. And this sudden withdrawal of attention is the most unsettling thing they can do to the narcissist. The dark empath doesn't announce their departure, nor do they give the narcissist the satisfaction of a confrontation. Instead, they slowly begin to withdraw emotionally. They stop engaging in the narcissist's drama. They stop validating their exaggerated sense of self, and they stop playing into the cycle of manipulation. This emotional distance is felt almost immediately by the narcissist. At first, they might not know what's happening. The empath hasn't told them they're leaving, but suddenly, the connection seems to be unraveling. The narcissist begins to feel the shift, but they can't quite place it. The beauty of the silent exit lies in its simplicity. No words are exchanged, no explanations are offered, and no promises are made. The dark empath simply starts to pull back, leaving the narcissist in the dark about why things are changing. This emotional withdrawal causes a deep sense of confusion and frustration in the narcissist. They can't understand why the empath is no longer reacting to their manipulations, why they're not chasing after them. This creates a growing sense of panic within the narcissist. As the empath continues to retreat, the narcissist tries to cling to the relationship, pulling the empath back in with grand gestures or attempts to guilt-trip them. But the dark empath stays strong, resolute in their decision. The narcissist begins to feel powerless, and that's when the chaos truly begins. Their need for validation goes unmet, their sense of control is slipping, and the emotional support they relied on starts to fade. With no one to validate their reality, the narcissist begins to spiral. They might try to escalate their tactics, but the empath is no longer engaged. This silent exit forces the narcissist to face their own emptiness, their own inability to control others without constantly feeding their ego. The more the narcissist tries to regain control, the more they unravel. They can't understand why their usual tactics aren't working, and they begin to question themselves, their relationships, and their own worth. As the narcissist deals with their confusion and frustration, they are left in a state of emotional chaos. They might lash out at others, or they might retreat into their own mind, but whatever they do, they can't escape the feeling that they've lost something important. The empath has left, and the narcissist has no closure, no answers, and no way to regain control. This silence, this quiet departure, is the ultimate power play. The narcissist, who's used to being the one who controls the narrative, is left with nothing but their own self-doubt and confusion. The empath, with their decision to simply walk away, has shown them that they can't control everything. That even their most manipulative tactics have no effect on someone who refuses to engage. In the end, the narcissist is left to stew in their own emotional chaos. They'll likely try to reach out, try to manipulate the situation, or try to find a way to regain the control they lost. But it's too late. The dark empath is already gone, leaving them with only their ego, their insecurities, and their desperation. The narcissist can't win, because they've lost the one thing they never expected to lose: control over the empath, and ultimately, control over themselves. The silent exit is the dark empath's final, devastating act of power. For the narcissist, closure is an illusion. They thrive on control, validation, and being the center of attention. But at their core, they are deeply insecure and terrified of being exposed as flawed or vulnerable. They need to feel superior and validated in order to maintain their fragile ego. When a dark empath decides to walk away from the narcissist without offering any closure, they deliver a punishment far more painful than any confrontation could ever be. It is a punishment that doesn't involve words, arguments, or final goodbyes. It's simply the absence of closure. Closure is something the narcissist desperately seeks. They crave it because it allows them to maintain their self-image, to wrap things up in a way that reinforces their sense of superiority. If they can have the last word, manipulate their way into an apology, or make the situation fit their narrative, they can feel a sense of control over the outcome. But when the dark empath silently exits, offering no explanation, no closure, the narcissist is left hanging, with their emotions unresolved and their sense of control shattered. The narcissist's mind becomes consumed with questions. They replay the relationship over and over in their head, searching for the moment when things went wrong, trying to pinpoint where the empath pulled away. What did they do wrong? Was it something they said? Did they not try hard enough? The narcissist cannot accept the possibility that they are simply no longer important to someone. Their self-absorbed mindset refuses to acknowledge that someone could walk away without seeking their approval or validating their worth. The lack of closure leaves the narcissist in emotional limbo. This uncertainty is a wound the narcissist cannot heal. They're accustomed to having their relationships end in a way that reinforces their own narrative of control and superiority. Whether it's an explosive argument, a dramatic confrontation, or a guilt-inducing speech, they're used to being in charge of how things end. But the dark empath's decision to leave without a word or a reason is a silent, invisible strike that cuts much deeper. It forces the narcissist to confront something they can't control, their own emotions and self-worth. The absence of closure forces the narcissist into a state of emotional disarray. They can't move on because they never got the resolution they crave. They are left without a clear understanding of why things ended, and this lack of control eats at their psyche. The narcissist might try to move on by distracting themselves with new relationships, new conquests, or simply by trying to ignore the pain. But the truth is that the lack of closure lingers in their mind, haunting them. They can never fully understand why the empath walked away, and that uncertainty becomes a slow-burning torment that gnaws at their soul. In the absence of closure, the narcissist faces their own inadequacy. They cannot pin down their feelings, and they cannot force others to give them the answers they so desperately need. For someone who relies on external validation to sustain their self-image, this is deeply unsettling. The narcissist's fear of rejection and exposure as inadequate is made real when they're left in emotional suspension. The power they once had over the empath is gone, and without closure, they cannot grasp how or why it slipped away. The dark empath knows how to play the game without ever needing to raise their voice or create a scene. They've learned that true power isn't about confrontation. It's about silently stepping away from toxic people and situations when the time is right. In the case of the narcissist, this exit becomes an act of profound strength. As the narcissist struggles with their own manipulation and control tactics, the dark empath walks away, leaving them to deal with their own chaos. This subtle exit is where the dark empath's victory lies, and it's a victory that, unlike the narcissist's false sense of superiority, is rooted in inner strength and clarity. The narcissist operates on the assumption that they are always in control, that they have the ability to bend others to their will, manipulate emotions, and dominate relationships. They feed on admiration, approval, and subjugation of others. The dark empath, however, understands this dynamic. They've seen the narcissist's tactics and learned to navigate the storm without getting caught in it. Instead of engaging in the narcissist's drama or sinking into their emotional traps, the dark empath calmly steps aside, choosing emotional detachment over engagement. And in doing so, they win. While the narcissist continues to chase validation, control, and attention, the dark empath is already moving on. They don't need to seek validation from others, nor do they need to win arguments or prove a point. The dark empath walks away unscathed, emotionally whole, and with a sense of peace. This is the first sign of true strength, the ability to disconnect from the narcissist's games without becoming emotionally entangled. One of the main reasons the dark empath walks away stronger is that they have learned to understand their own emotions and boundaries. They know what they deserve, and they are not willing to sacrifice their peace for anyone's ego.